Just over 56 years ago today, on Thursday, May 26, 1966, Betty Lou Zukowski left her family's home on Front Street in Chicopee around 6 p.m. after receiving a phone call that she told her mother was from one of her girlfriends. That was in fact the last time that they saw her.
On May 30, 1966, a father and his son were fishing on the bank of the Westfield River in West Springfield, and they discovered something larger than a usual fish floating just below the surface of the water. Out of curiosity, they tried casting their fishing net just to be sure it was not a fish. Shockingly to them, a dead body surfaced. That body was 10-year-old Betty Lou Zukowski, who had gone missing for a few days. The fishermen quickly informed the police, who rushed down to the crime scene to investigate the matter. At the time, Mildred and Stanley Zukowski had filed a missing person report of their daughter with the Chicopee Police Department. The police then informed them to come identify if the found body was their lost daughter. The worst fear of a parent is having to bury their own child. Mildred and Stanley prayed for Betty Lou's safety and hoped that she wouldn't be the one found dead in the river. Unfortunately, it seemed luck was far from them, because, on getting to the crime scene, they discovered that the dead body was indeed their daughter, Betty Lou Zukowski. On Thursday, May 26, 1966, approximately 57 years ago, 10-year-old Catholic schoolgirl, Betty Lou Zukowski left her family's house on 293 Front Street in Chicopee, Massachusetts around 6 p.m., right after getting a phone call from someone whom she told her mother was her girlfriend. She was supposed to meet up with this girlfriend and hang out for a cup of ice cream. Her parents, being used to their daughter leaving the house often, gave her the permission to go. They never knew that would be the last time they would see their daughter alive. Betty Lou Zukowski prepared to head out as she dressed in a green checkered blouse, blue pants, a jacket, and white sneakers. She also took along with her $2. Later that evening, when Betty Lou failed to return home, her parents, Stanley and Mildred Zukowski, called the Chicopee Police Department around 11:15 p.m. to report her missing. For some reason, they told the police not to declare her publicly missing for a significant amount of hours. Some sources said they were probably used to her staying away from home for that long. However, the Chicopee Police Department quickly issued an all-states alarm in their attempt to find her. They later learned that the girlfriend Betty Lou talked about was not real. The search for her continued for 3 days without progress, but sadly, 4 days later, on the 30th of May 1966, which appeared to be a Memorial Day, Betty Lou's battered and mud-covered body was found offshore by 2 young men fishing in the Westfield River in West Springfield. According to autopsy results, her cause of death was determined to be multiple blunt force injuries to her head, a skull fracture, and terminal drowning. Betty Lou was still alive when she went into the Westfield River, and she had not been sexually assaulted. The police believed that she was beaten within 15 minutes of her drowning. After discovering Betty Lou's remains, there was a joint homicide investigation led by the West Springfield Police Department and assisted by the Chicopee Police Department. These police departments initially assigned their entire detective bureaus to the case. The Hampton County District Attorney's Office and the Massachusetts State Police were also involved. In order to find clues, there was a thorough search along the shore where Betty Lou's body was found. Also, divers searched the river for any helpful evidence that could pinpoint the perpetrator. Nothing was found, not even the murder weapon. The investigators then interviewed Betty Lou's family, friends, and classmates to determine who she may have met up with at the time of her disappearance and eventual murder. Her Chicopee friends had told police that she liked exploring the caves that were dug into the bank of Chicopee River behind the Chicopee Electric Light Company. Police, however, checked all the places she loved to explore but found nothing that could lead them to her killer. According to police and news reports from the time of her death, Betty Lou was portrayed as a loose girl. Her friends described her as smart, kind, funny, adventurous, energetic and spunky. They said she had dyed her dark brown hair to blonde at the age of 10. She wore makeup, had pierced ears and often wore cross-shaped earrings. According to her close friends, she had been seen at times with teenage boys, hanging out with them mostly in their cars. Some people said Betty Lou was probably in a hurry to grow up at the age of 10, and her free-spirited nature must have made her trust an older person who eventually took advantage of her and murdered her. Betty Lou's friend had told investigators that she had once said she was seeing a boy named Ralph. Back in 1966, according to her friend's description of Ralph, he was a white, 17 or 18 years old male with black hair, brown eyes, medium complexion, and often wore black-framed glasses. He was said to be 5'5" and weighed between 125 and 135 pounds. He drove either a Chevrolet that had a dark blue bottom with either a white or light blue top or a dark green Chevrolet sedan. However, the police discovered that the name Ralph was non-existent. Betty Lou had either lied about Ralph's real name or Ralph had lied to Betty Lou about his name. The police believed that Betty Lou knew the person who killed her, otherwise she would not have left her home after receiving the phone call on Thursday night. Detectives claimed that she met up with this person and ended up in West Springfield after riding in a vehicle operated by someone she knew. However, in the days following the discovery of her body, there was no significant leads. On the 2nd of June 1966, Betty Lou Zukowski was buried on her 11th birthday. Her funeral was held at Holy Name Church in Chicopee and was conducted with high mass honors. Several schoolmates from her 5th grade class at the Valentine School in Chicopee were pallbearers. Those who attended her funeral were made up of her entire class and her teacher. Betty Lou was free-spirited and was deeply loved. A week after Betty Lou remains were found, detectives developed a sketch of the suspect from 2 witnesses. One of these witnesses was the last person to have seen Betty Lou alive few hours before she was killed on May 26, 1966. This sketch, however, was similar to Ralph's description. The sketch was later released to the public and was highly publicized in local newspapers at the time. It brought investigators some tips, but none led to the identity of the killer. Having exhausted all leads, the case went cold for years, but, after the formation of the Hampton District Attorney's Office's Unresolved Cases Unit in 2019, Betty Lou's homicide case was reopened. Officials then got to find out that in November of 1997, a man named Donald Mars was brought up as a suspect when investigators of the West Springfield Police Department received information from multiple sources that linked him to Betty Lou's killing. However, he was never arrested due to lack of sufficient evidence to pin him to the crime. 25 years later, in 2022, Betty Lou's case gained an intense focus, and on Tuesday, November 1 of 2022, Donald Mars was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Betty Lou Zukowski. A warrant for his arrest was issued. Donald Mars was then taken into custody on the 2nd of November 2022. The evidence that linked him to the murder has not been disclosed yet, but, at the press conference, Hampton District Attorney Anthony Gugliuni did mention that significant statements made led to Donald Mars' arrest. Someone must have seen something and confessed, or Donald Mars probably implicated himself during interrogation. Donald Mars came from a well-known family in Chicopee. His father, Roger Mars, owned Mars Heating and Service, and had 5 sons. Roger Mars served in Korea, and at least 2 of his sons were in the military. Donald Mars was probably one of those sons in the military because at the time of his arrest, he was living at a Veterans Administration facility in Bedford. Donald Mars seemed to have quite a number of crimes in his life book. According to the State Sex Offender Registry Board, in 1995, Donald Mars had been convicted of 2 counts of child rape with force and 3 counts of indecent assault and battery on a child under 14. He is classified as a Level 3 sex offender, which means he is considered most likely to re-offend. When he was convicted in May of 1995, he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, and was released in June of 1997 and given probation. He violated the probation and was given a 5 to 7 year sentence at Cedar Junction. After his convictions, Donald Mars was determined to be sexually dangerous and was civilly committed to the Massachusetts Treatment Center in Bridgewater from 1994 to 2015, before finally landing in a Veterans Administration facility, a hospital in Bedford, Massachusetts where he was living before his arrest. At the time of Betty Lou's murder, Donald was 17 years of age and, the sketch made from the description of Ralph by Betty Lou's friends, is similar to the high school yearbook photo of Donald Mars. Also, at the time of murder, Donald Mars was somewhat familiar with the area where Betty Lou's body was found. According to a newspaper archive, his family used to visit his grandparents' house at 102 Woodmont Street in West Springfield. They went to their home for Christmas, Thanksgiving, and other occasions. This address is a 4-minute drive from the murder scene at the end of Dewey Street. Donald Mars, who is now 73 years old, was arraigned to a Hampton Superior Court indictment charging him with first-degree murder for the killing of Betty Lou. In a proceeding conducted via Zoom, when he was asked to enter his plea, Donald Mars pleaded not guilty while sounding as if he wanted to burst into tears.
As this indictment, sir, how do you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Thank you, sir.
His criminal history was described and he was asked to be held without right to bail. This didn't sit well with Donald Mars as he appeared disdainful. The case was adjourned to May 1 of 2023 for pre-trial conference. Sadly, Betty Lou's parents are no more as they died in the 1980s. Mildred Zukowski, who died at the age of 61, was said to have fell off from her room's window. Some source said she committed suicide since she probably could not take the pain of losing Betty Lou Zukowski, her only child. A year later, Stanley Zukowski died at age 64 from an unknown cause. No siblings of the Zukowski family is recorded alive. However, the Hampton District Attorney, Anthony Gugliuni, has this to say after Donald Mars was finally arrested.
Sadly, Betty Lou's parents are deceased and will not see Donald Mars answer for what we allege he did to their daughter. My office, however, has been in contact with Betty Lou's extended family members, one of whom, in fact, was a pallbearer at her funeral in 1966. While this investigation undoubtedly will not bring Betty Lou back to her family or grant her the opportunity to grow into a healthy adult that she and every child deserves, it is for them and for Betty Lou that we embark on this journey of seeking justice.
Many cold cases had been left unsolved for ages without the perpetrators being brought to book. But recently, families of murder victims now have a glimmer of hope as most of these cases are being truly solved, giving them closure and finally finding peace and rest for their deceased loved ones. We hope that all perpetrators of murder and other horrible crimes be apprehended even before they get a chance to go 6 feet under the ground. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up and let us know what your thoughts are in the comments.